The council chamber fell silent as Princess Mireille stepped forward. Her violet eyes swept across the gathered leaders of the Velkhari Empire, reading the exhaustion in their faces. 3 years of war had drained their resources and broken their spirits. The humans, those strange beings from the far edge of the galaxy, had proven far more difficult to conquer than anyone had predicted. "The humans have sent their terms," Emperor Taiyang announced, his voice heavy with something Mireille had never heard from her father before. "Defeat. They offer peace, but with a condition. They want a marriage alliance." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Marriage alliances were ancient, almost forgotten in modern warfare. But Mireille understood immediately. The humans wanted insurance, a guarantee that the Velkhari would honor the treaty. "I will do it," Mireille said, her voice cutting through the whispers. Every head turned toward her. "I will marry their representative." Her father's eyes met hers, and she saw relief mixed with guilt. "Mireille, you don't have to. Yes, I do." She straightened her shoulders, feeling the weight of her royal upbringing settle over her like armor. "Our people are dying. Our colonies are burning. If my marriage can end this war, then it's a small price to pay." What she didn't say, what she kept hidden behind her composed expression, was her real motivation. As a royal bride, she would have access to human society, their culture, their secrets. She would learn their weaknesses from the inside. The war might pause now, but someday, the Velkhari Empire would need that knowledge. 3 days later, Mireille stood in the docking bay of the human diplomatic vessel. The ship was smaller than she expected, functional rather than impressive. Everything about it spoke of efficiency over grandeur. Her attendants had dressed her in traditional Velkhari robes, deep purple silk that shimmered like starlight. She wanted the humans to understand exactly what they were getting. A princess of the oldest empire in the galaxy. The airlock opened, and Captain Ginho stepped through. Mireille had studied his file during the journey. 32 years old, career military officer, decorated for valor in a dozen battles. The file was sparse on personal details, as if the man existed only through his service record. She had expected someone harsh, maybe even cruel. War did that to soldiers. Instead, she found herself looking at a man with tired eyes and a gentle face. He wore a simple uniform, dark blue with minimal decorations. When he bowed to her, it was neither mocking nor subservient, just a gesture of respect between equals. "Princess Mireille," he said, his voice quiet. "Thank you for coming. I know this isn't what you would have chosen." The acknowledgement surprised her. Most arranged marriages pretended at romance or political enthusiasm. Ginho simply stated the truth plainly. "It's what my people need," Mireille replied, matching his directness. "Shall we proceed with the ceremony?" The wedding was brief and formal. A human official read words about unity and peace, while Mireille and Ginho stood side by side in the ship's small chapel. There were no flowers, no celebration, no pretense that this was anything other than a political necessity. When the official pronounced them married, Ginho didn't try to kiss her. He simply offered his hand, and she shook it. "Ah, welcome aboard," he said. "I'll show you to your quarters. They're next to mine. You'll have complete privacy and freedom of movement on the ship." As they walked through the corridors, Mireille observed everything. The human crew members they passed all nodded respectfully to her, showing no fear despite her species' reputation. The Velkhari were known throughout the galaxy for their psychic abilities and superior physical strength. Most species treated them with cautious deference, always aware of the danger. These humans simply smiled and went about their duties. Her quarters were comfortable, but not luxurious. A bed, a desk, a private bathroom, and a large window showing the stars streaming past as they traveled toward Earth. Ginho stood in the doorway, maintaining a respectful distance. "If you need anything, just ask the ship's computer. It's programmed to respond to your voice. Meals are communal in the dining hall, but I can have food brought to your room if you prefer." "Communal dining?" Mireille raised an eyebrow. "You eat with your crew?" "Of course. We're all in this together." Ginho looked puzzled by her question, as if she had asked something strange. In the Valkyrie military, officers dine separately from enlisted personnel. It maintains proper hierarchy. Ah, Ginho nodded slowly. We don't do that. Rank is for decisions and responsibilities, not for separating people. But you're welcome to eat wherever you're comfortable. That evening, she found herself in Jinho's old room, unable to sleep. She accessed the public database through her personal device, searching for information about human culture. What she found shook her understanding even further. Human entertainment was full of stories about sacrifice, movies where heroes died to save others, books about people giving up everything for their friends or family, or even strangers, songs about love and loss and the pain of caring about others. Their history was soaked in blood, but not from conquest. From protection. From saving each other. She read about something called the Second World War, where millions died fighting against an empire that wanted to control the world. She read about firefighters who ran into burning buildings to save people they'd never met. She read about ordinary citizens who threw themselves in front of danger to protect children, elders, anyone vulnerable. It made no strategic sense. In Valkyrie culture, leaders were protected above all others because they held the most value. The strong survived while the weak fell behind. It was logical, efficient, proper. But humans seemed to have it backwards. They threw away their strongest to save their weakest. They valued every life as if it mattered equally. Mireille sent another encrypted message to her father. Human culture is built on principles that contradict military logic. They prioritize individuals over collective strength. They show mercy that borders on weakness. Yet somehow, they won the war. I don't understand it yet, but I will keep investigating. What she didn't write was the thought that kept her awake that night. What if this wasn't weakness? What if the Valkyrie Empire had misunderstood something fundamental about humanity? What if mercy and kindness, things her people had always seen as flaws, were actually sources of strength? The moon rose over the garden, silver light falling on the place where the vase had broken. In the morning, Sora would sweep up the pieces and throw them away. No ceremony, no mourning, just accepting that things break and moving on. Because as she had said, things can be replaced, people cannot. It was such a simple idea. But it turned Mireille's whole worldview upside down. She fell asleep thinking about it, and for the first time since leaving Velkara, she didn't dream of war. 3 months had passed since Mireille arrived on Earth. She had settled into a strange, new rhythm of life. One that felt less like a political assignment and more like something she didn't have a word for. Ginho remained respectful and distant, never pushing for more than friendship. His family treated her like she belonged. Even Doyan had taken to following her around, asking endless questions about space and aliens, and whether she could really read minds like the stories said she had explained. Patient, despite her confusion at her own patience. That Valkyrie could sense emotions and sometimes surface thoughts. But it wasn't like the human movies suggested. It was more like feeling the mood in a room, knowing when someone was lying, understanding fear or joy without words. Doyan had been fascinated, making her promise to teach him how to hide his thoughts. She had laughed and told him he didn't need to hide anything from her. When the invitation came to attend a diplomatic function at Ganymede Station, Mireille volunteered to go with Ginho. I should be seen in public with you, she had said, giving the practical reason. The truth, which she barely admitted to herself, was that she didn't want him to go alone. She had grown used to his steady presence, his quiet kindness, the way he never demanded anything of her. Ganymede Station orbited Jupiter, a massive structure that served as a trading hub between the inner and outer solar system. The diplomatic function was supposed to be routine, various species representatives, discussing trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Mireille wore formal Valkyrie robes, and Ginho wore his dress uniform. They looked every bit the official couple, a symbol of peace between their peoples. The reception hall was crowded with diplomats from a dozen species. Mireille recognized representatives from the Thrall Confederacy, a loose alliance of pirate clans that had recently signed a non-aggression pact with humanity. She didn't trust them. The Thrall were known for breaking agreements when profit called, Her instincts proved correct 2 hours into the event. The explosion came without warning. The far wall of the reception hall blew inward, and armed Thrall pirates poured through the breach. Alarms screamed. People screamed louder. Mirai's combat training kicked in immediately. She grabbed Jinho's arm, pulling him behind an overturned table. "We need to get to the emergency shelters," Jinho said, his voice calm despite the chaos. Around them, security forces were engaging the pirates, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Then Mirai heard something that froze her blood. Children crying. She looked across the hall and saw a group of Velkari youngsters. A school group that had been touring the station huddled near the opposite wall. Their teacher was trying to shield them, but a group of pirates was advancing on their position. "There are children," Mirai said. Pointing, Jinho saw them. His expression changed, became something hard and focused. "Stay here." "What?" "No, we need to," but Jinho was already moving. He grabbed a weapon from a fallen security officer and ran toward the children. Not away from danger, toward it. Mirai watched in disbelief as he put himself between the pirates and the Velkari. Youngsters, 3 other human security personnel, saw what Jinho was doing and joined him. 4 humans against at least a dozen armed pirates? It was suicide. Any rational tactical assessment said they should retreat, regroup, wait for reinforcements. Instead, they advanced. Mirai couldn't stay hidden. She ran after Jinho, using her psychic abilities to sense the pirates' positions, calling out warnings. 2 on your left. 1 behind the pillar. The firefight was brutal and brief. The humans fought with a precision that came from training, but also with something else. Something that made Moray's warrior instincts scream warnings. They took risks no sane soldier would take. Jinho threw himself into the open to draw fire away from the children. Another human, a young woman named Heejin, tackled a pirate twice her size who was aiming at the Valkyrie teacher. Then Mirai saw it happen. A pirate with a plasma rifle took aim at one of the Valkyrie children, a small girl who had frozen in terror. Jinho was closer. He could see what was about to happen. He moved without hesitation, throwing himself between the girl and the weapon. 3 plasma bolts hit him square in the chest. No. Mirai's scream tore from her throat. She ran to him as he fell, catching him before he hit the ground. His uniform was burned through, and she could see the terrible wounds beneath. Plasma burns were usually fatal. The heat destroyed tissue faster than most species could heal. But Jinho was still conscious, still breathing. He looked up at the Valkyrie girl who stood unharmed behind him. "Run," he managed to say to her. "Get to the shelters." The girl ran, crying, along with the other children. Their teacher shepherded them toward safety while the remaining humans held the line. Station security was finally arriving in force, and the pirates began to retreat. Mirai pressed her hands against Jinho's wounds, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to use what little medical knowledge she had. "You stupid human. Why would you do that? Why would you risk your life for a child that isn't even your species?" Jinho's face was pale with pain, but his eyes were clear. She was a child. That's all that mattered. Medical teams arrived. They stabilized Jinho and rushed him to the station's hospital. Mirai stayed with him, refusing to leave his side even when the doctor said he needed surgery. She waited outside the operating room for 6 hours. Her robe still stained with his blood. Yunji arrived on the next transport, her face tight with worry. She found Mirai in the waiting area and sat beside her without a word. For a long time, neither spoke. "Will he live?" Yanji finally asked.
Yes.
The doctors say yes. Humans are surprisingly resilient. The wounds were severe, but they've stabilized him. Mirai's voice was hollow. "He's lucky to be alive," Yunji repeated softly. "I suppose that's one word for it. Why did he do it? Why do any of you do it? He could have died. That child wasn't his responsibility. She wasn't even human." Yunji looked at her with sad, knowing eyes. "Because that's who we are. We can't see someone in danger and not help. We can't watch the innocent suffer and do nothing. It's not logical. It's not strategic. It's just how we're built." The next day, Station security brought in the pirate leader for questioning. Mireille demanded to be present. The pirate was a large Threll male, scarred and dangerous looking. But when he saw Mireille, something like fear flickered in his eyes. "You targeted children," Mireille said, her voice cold. "Why?" the pirate laughed, but it sounded forced. "We thought we could use them for leverage. Hostages bring good ransom money. You knew there were humans on this station. The laughter died. We thought they were just diplomats. We didn't know there would be military personnel. We didn't know they would." He trailed off, shaking his head. "They would what?" "Fight like that. Protect like that. We've raided dozens of stations. Every species does the same thing. They negotiate, they stall, they try to minimize losses. But humans?" He looked haunted. "They just come at you. They don't care about their own survival. They don't retreat. They don't negotiate. They just keep coming, protecting whoever needs protecting. It's not natural. It's not sane." The security officer questioning him leaned forward. "Where did you get your intelligence about the station's defenses? Our network shares information. We know which stations are safe to hit and which to avoid. Any place humans are known to protect is marked as forbidden. Too risky. Too unpredictable. We thought this was just a diplomatic visit, that they'd be unarmed, easy to control." He shook his head again. "We were wrong." Mireille left the interrogation room feeling numb. She returned to the hospital, where Jinho was finally awake. He looked terrible, pale and weak, with tubes and monitors attached to him. But he smiled when he saw her. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Did they catch them?" "Yes. All of them." Mireille sat in the chair beside his bed. "The little girl you saved, her name is Hannah. She asked about you. Her family wants to thank you. No need for thanks." "Is she okay? None of the children were hurt?" "They're all fine. Because of you. Because of what you did." Mireille looked at him, really looked at him, trying to understand. "You were ready to die for her. Yes. But why?" "I keep asking this, and I keep getting answers that don't make sense. She was Valkyrie. Your people fought a war against mine. She was a stranger, a child of your former enemies, and you threw yourself in front of plasma fire to save her. Why?" Jinho was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Do you remember when we first met on the ship? You asked why we weren't afraid of you. I said fear doesn't help anyone, I remember. It's the same thing. Fear, hate, revenge, all of that, it doesn't help. It doesn't make anything better. But protecting someone, saving a life, that matters. That makes the universe a little bit better. Whether that person is human or Valkyrie or any other species doesn't change the fact that they matter. Life matters, even at the cost of your own life. Especially then. What good is my life if I live it watching others suffer and doing nothing? What kind of person would I be?" Mireille felt tears on her face and realized she was crying. In Valkyrie culture, warriors didn't cry. Leaders didn't show weakness. But she couldn't stop the tears. Couldn't stop the emotion that was crashing through her carefully built walls. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "I don't understand any of you. You're all crazy." Jinho reached out and took her hand. His grip was weak, but warm. "Maybe we are, but it's who we are. We can't be anything else." Later, when Jinho had fallen asleep and Mireille was alone with her thoughts, she sent another message to her father. This one was different from the others. This one was honest in a way that frightened her. "Father, I've witnessed something today that I cannot explain using our military doctrine. The humans don't fight to win. They fight to protect. They throw away their own survival to save others, even their former enemies. I watched my husband take plasma fire to shield a Valkyrie child. He would have died for her without hesitation. I'm beginning to understand why we couldn't defeat them. It's not about weapons or tactics. It's about will. They have decided that some things matter more than survival, and you cannot negotiate with that. You cannot intimidate it. You cannot outlast it. I think we were very fortunate they offered peace. I think we were very fortunate they are kind. Because if they weren't, we would all be dead." She sent the message and sat in the quiet hospital room, watching Jinho breathe. His family's words echoed in her mind. Things can be replaced. People cannot. Such a simple philosophy, but it changed everything. For the first time since this marriage began, Mireille looked at Jinho and didn't see a political arrangement or an intelligence opportunity. She saw a man who had chosen to protect rather than attack, to give rather than take, to die rather than let a child suffer. She saw someone worth protecting in return, and that realization terrified her more than any battle ever had. Ginho spent 2 weeks recovering in the hospital. Mireille stayed with him for most of it, leaving only when Yunji forced her to rest or eat. During those long, quiet hours, something shifted between them. They talked more than they ever had, about small things and large things, about life and death and everything in between. Ginho told her about growing up on Earth, about his decision to join the military, about the friends he'd lost in the war. Mireille found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone, about the pressure of being a princess, about her fears and doubts, about the loneliness of always having to be strong when the doctors finally cleared him for light duty. Jinho returned to Earth to finish his recovery. Mireille went with him, but she couldn't shake the questions that Ganymede Station had planted in her mind. She needed to understand. She needed to know why humans were the way they were. One evening, while Jinho was resting and his family was occupied, Mireille made a decision. She accessed the human military network using her diplomatic credentials. Technically, she had access to unclassified information as part of the peace treaty. What she was looking for, however, went deeper than press releases and official statements. She wanted the truth about the war. The archives were vast, containing records from 3 years of conflict. Mireille started with the beginning, with the first encounter between humanity and the Valkyrie Empire. What she found made her hands shake. The Valkyrie Empire had fired first. She knew that, had always known it. The official story was that humanity had been expanding too aggressively, threatening established borders, refusing proper diplomatic protocols. The Empire had acted to contain a potential threat, but the human records told a different story. They had tried to establish communication 17 times before the Valkyrie fleet opened fire. 17 attempts to talk, to negotiate, to avoid conflict. The Empire had ignored every one and attacked what they thought was a weak, primitive species. Mireille read the casualty reports from the first month. Human colonies wiped out. Civilian transports destroyed. Research stations burned. The Valkyrie military had approached the war with their usual efficiency, striking hard and fast to break the enemy's will. It should have worked. By every historical precedent, humanity should have surrendered within weeks. Instead, they fought back. Mireille pulled up the tactical analyses from both sides. She read them side by side, comparing Valkyrie assessments with human reports. The Valkyrie commanders had been confident at first, noting humanity's inferior numbers and technology. Then the confidence began to crack. Enemy refuses to retreat even when defeated. Human ships continue fighting after sustaining critical damage. Captured human soldiers refuse to provide intelligence, even under extreme interrogation. Enemy colony defended itself for 3 weeks beyond any reasonable expectation, evacuating all children before a final defensive stand. Mireille felt sick. She remembered celebrating some of these victories. Believing the Empire was teaching an upstart species their place in the galaxy, she had never asked about the details, never wondered what final defensive stand really meant. She found footage from the Battle of Titan, a human colony world on one of Saturn's moons. The Valkyrie fleet had surrounded it, cutting off all escape routes. Standard procedure was to demand surrender, occupy the planet, and integrate it into the Empire. Instead, the humans had broadcast a message. Mireille played the recording. A human commander, a woman with gray hair and tired eyes, appeared on screen. To the Valkyrie fleet, we know we cannot win this battle. We know you will take this colony. But understand this. Every transport we have is now evacuating children and elderly to the inner system. Every single transport. We have nothing left to fight with except our lives, and we will use them. Every second you waste on us is a second those transports get further away. Every life you take here is a life that will make you remember that we do not surrender our children, ever. If you want this rock, come and take it. But you'll pay for every meter in blood. The battle had lasted 6 days. The humans had no ships capable of fighting the Valkyrie fleet, but they turned everything else into weapons. Cargo haulers rigged with explosives, mining equipment converted into makeshift missiles. They threw everything they had at the Valkyrie forces, not to win, but to buy time. When the Valkyrie finally took the colony, they found it empty except for the defenders. Every child, every elderly person, every civilian who couldn't fight had been evacuated. The humans had stayed behind to die so others could live. Murray read the Valkyrie commander's report. Recommend immediate caution in future engagements. Enemy displays unprecedented willingness to accept casualties for non-military objectives. Standard siege tactics, ineffective. Morale, impact on our forces, concerning. Several soldiers have requested counseling after witnessing enemy civilians choosing death over surrender. She kept reading, going deeper into the archives. Battle after battle, the pattern repeated. Humans didn't fight to win territory. They fought to protect people. A medical frigate that broadcast its position to draw fire away from refugee ships. A destroyer that rammed a Valkyrie flagship after its weapons were destroyed. A ground force that held a position for 72 hours against overwhelming odds to give civilians time to escape, knowing none of them would survive. Then Murray found something that stopped her cold. A classified document, Eisenly, for the highest levels of the Valkyrie command. It was a memo from her father, Emperor Taiyang, written after the Battle of Praxis. Her hands trembled as she read his words. The humans are not stronger than us. They do not possess superior technology. Their tactics are often reckless to the point of suicide, but they possess something we cannot counter and do not understand. They fight every battle as if losing it means the extinction of everything they love. Our soldiers fight for the Empire, for glory, for rank and honor. Human soldiers fight for each other, for people they will never meet, for children not yet born. We can kill them, but we cannot break them. Every victory costs us more than we can afford. Every battle, even those we win, damages morale and raises questions among our troops. Recommend immediate ceasefire and negotiation. We cannot win a war of attrition against an enemy that has already accepted death. There was more. Strategic assessments warning that humanity was preparing for a final offensive. Not an attack on Valkyrie territory, but a desperate push to destroy the Empire's ability to threaten human space. The analysis predicted catastrophic casualties on both sides. Billions would die. And the humans were willing to pay that price if it meant protecting their people. The marriage alliance had been humanity's idea. But not because they were desperate. They had offered peace because they knew the alternative would be mutually assured destruction. And they had decided that even their enemies deserved a chance to live. Murray sat back, her mind reeling. The Valkyrie Empire had started a war with a species they thought was weak. They had discovered too late that humans weren't weak at all. They were simply kind, and that kindness made them more dangerous than any warrior race. She found one more document, a personal log from a human admiral named Young-Ho. It was dated 3 days before the peace treaty was announced. We've won. The Valkyrie don't know it yet, but we've won. Our fleets are in position. Our weapons are ready. We could end this war in a month, maybe less. The cost would be everything. We'd lose half our population. Earth itself might be bombarded, but we'd win. We'd break their empire and ensure they never threaten another species again. But then what? We'd be the monsters. We'd be the ones who chose genocide over peace. Is that who we want to be? Is that the legacy we want to leave? The Valkyrie princess has agreed to marry one of our officers. It's a way out, a way to peace without more death. Some in the military think it's a trap, that we should press our advantage. But I think about the Valkyrie civilians we've seen in the occupied zones. They're just people like us. They have families, dreams, fears. They didn't choose this war any more than our civilians did, so we offer peace. Not because we're weak, but because we're strong enough to be merciful. That's what separates us from them. That's what makes us worth saving. Murray closed the files and sat in the darkness of Jinho's old room. Everything she had believed about the war, about her people's strength, about humanity's nature, had been turned upside down. The door opened quietly. Jinho stood there, his hands still bandaged from the injuries at Ganymede. Couldn't sleep? I've been reading about the war, about what really happened. Jinho was quiet for a moment. What did you find? The truth. That my people started a war we couldn't win. That you could have destroyed us but chose not to. That this marriage, me being here, it was mercy. You were being merciful to your enemies. Jinho came and sat beside her on the bed. It wasn't mercy. It was just the right thing to do. More death wouldn't have helped anyone. You let us save face. You let the Empire announce the peace as if it was a mutual agreement, equal parties coming together. But it wasn't. You had one, and you let us pretend we hadn't lost. Would you have preferred we humiliated your people? Demanded unconditional surrender? Occupied your worlds? Jinho shook his head. That's not peace. That's just planting seeds for the next war. We wanted real peace, the kind that lasts. That meant giving your people dignity. Mireille turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. I came here to spy on you. I was supposed to learn your weaknesses, gather intelligence for when the war started again. I was using you, using your family's kindness, using everything. And you knew, didn't you? You knew what I was doing, I suspected. It didn't matter. How can you say it didn't matter? I was betraying you from the beginning. Were you? Jinho met her eyes. Or were you a princess trying to protect her people the only way you knew how? I don't blame you for that, Mireille. I never did. Are you so kind? Why are all of you so infuriatingly, impossibly kind? Don't you understand that it makes you vulnerable? That people like me, people who were raised to see kindness as weakness, we could destroy you. You could try, Jinho said softly. But you won't, because you're not that person anymore. I've watched you change over these months. I've seen you with Do-Yan, how patient you are with his questions. I've seen you with my mother, learning to cook Earth food even though you don't have to. I've seen you risk your life to protect people at Ganymede Station. You're not a spy anymore, Mireille. You're family. The word hit her like a physical blow. Family. When had that happened? When had these strange, kind, impossible humans become her family? I don't deserve this, she whispered. I don't deserve your kindness, or your trust, or your family. That's not how family works. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to deserve it. It's just given freely, because that's what love is. Love. The word hung in the air between them. Mireille looked at Jinho, this man who had married her for peace, who had never demanded anything from her, who had taken plasma fire to protect a child of her species. This man who had somehow, without her noticing, become the most important person in her universe. I need to tell my father the truth, she said. I need to tell him that this peace is real, that you're not planning to attack us. We need to honor the treaty, not out of fear, but out of respect. Can I do that? Can I betray my mission and choose your side? It's not about sides anymore, Jinho said. That's the whole point. It's about all of us, humans and Velkari and every other species, trying to build something better than war. You're not betraying anyone by choosing peace. You're fulfilling the real purpose of this marriage, bringing our peoples together. Mireille sent one final message to her father that night. Not encrypted, not secret, just honest. Father, I've learned the truth about the war. The humans could have destroyed us, but chose mercy instead. This marriage was their way of giving us dignity in defeat. I came here as a spy, but I'm staying as a wife. I've seen what real strength looks like, and it's not in conquest or domination. It's in choosing kindness, when cruelty would be easier. It's in protecting others, even at cost to yourself. The humans are teaching me how to be better than I was. I hope they can teach our empire the same lesson. The peace is real. Honor it not because we fear them, but because they've earned our respect. She didn't know what her father would say. She didn't know if the empire would accept this new understanding, or if they would see her as a traitor. But for the first time since coming to Earth, Mireille knew who she was and what she wanted. She was Jinho's wife, Doyen's aunt, part of Sora's family. She was human now, in all the ways that truly mattered. The response from her father came 2 days later. Mireille sat in the garden, the same place where Doyun had broken the vase months ago, and read his message with shaking hands. Daughter, your words have shaken the foundations of everything I believed. The council is divided. Some call for your return, saying you have been corrupted by human influence. Others argue that your observations match our own intelligence reports. The truth is difficult to accept, that we started a war we could not win, that we were shown mercy by those we considered inferior. But I cannot deny what you have witnessed, nor can I ignore the wisdom in your words. You have my permission to remain on Earth and continue building the bridge between our peoples. The peace will be honored. I give you my word as Emperor and as your father. Mireille wept with relief. The tears came freely now, no longer a source of shame. Sora found her in the garden and held her while she cried, asking no questions, just offering comfort the way she had with Doyen. It was such a human thing to do. And Mireille loved her for it. Life settled into a new pattern. Mireille truly became part of the family. She learned to cook kimchi with Sora, though her first attempts were disasters that made everyone laugh. She helped Doyen with his homework, teaching him about the stars and the different species that lived among them. She and Yunji became close, spending long afternoons talking about everything and nothing, and with Jinho, something deeper grew. The distance between them slowly closed. They began sharing meals alone together, taking walks through the countryside, talking late into the night about their hopes and fears. One evening, 6 months after Ganymede Station, Ginho took her hand during one of their walks. It was such a simple gesture, but it meant everything. Mireille laced her fingers through his and knew that this marriage had become real in every way that mattered. The peace held. Trade began between human and Valkyrie space. Cultural exchanges brought students and artists across the borders. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions and misunderstandings. But it was working then. 1 year after Moray's wedding, everything changed. The Drask Collective attacked. The Drask were an empire even larger than the Valkyrie, controlling dozens of systems. They had watched the human-Valkyrie war with interest, seeing humanity's mercy as weakness. When they struck at a Valkyrie border world called Keller, they expected minimal resistance. After all, the Valkyrie were weakened from their war with humanity, and the human alliance was surely just for show. They were catastrophically wrong, Mireille was at home with Ginho when the emergency broadcasts began. Keller was under attack. Civilian casualties were mounting. The Valkyrie defense forces were overwhelmed. She watched the news with growing horror, seeing familiar cities burning, hearing reports of schools being bombed, hospitals targeted. Then the human response began. Within 6 hours, human fleets were moving toward Valkyrie space. Not to invade, not to take advantage of the chaos, but to help. Mireille watched in amazement as human military vessels crossed the border. Broadcasting their intentions clearly, they were there to evacuate civilians and reinforce Valkyrie defenses. They're protecting us, she whispered. Your people are going to die protecting mine. Ginho was already packing. I've been called up. My unit deploys in 12 hours. Fear gripped Moray's heart. No, you're still recovering from Ganymede. You can't go back into combat so soon. I have to. People need help. He turned to face her, his expression gentle but firm. This is what I do, Mireille. This is who I am. I am coming with you. What? No, it's too dangerous. Don't even try that argument. Mireille stood, her royal bearing returning in full force. I am a princess of the Valkyrie Empire. My people are under attack. I will not hide on Earth while they suffer, and I will not let my husband face danger alone. They argued about it for an hour, but Mireille was immovable. Finally, Jinho gave in, but only on the condition that she'd stay with the evacuation teams rather than combat units. It was a compromise, but Mireille accepted it. The family gathered to see them off. Sora hugged them both tightly, whispering prayers for their safety. Yunji held her brother close, making him promise to come home. Doyen cried, clinging to Moray's legs until she knelt down and held him. Come back, she promised the boy. I swear to you, I'll come back. Both of you have to come back, Doyen said fiercely. your family. The journey to Keller took 3 days at maximum speed. During that time, Mireille received communications from her father. Emperor Tai Yang was in shock at the human response. Human ships were evacuating Valkyrie civilians by the thousands. Human soldiers were deploying to defend Valkyrie cities, taking positions that would make them the first casualties if the Drask breached the defensive lines. "I don't understand them," her father said in a private transmission. "We gave them nothing but blood and fire during our war. Yet they die for our children as if they were their own. Why would they do this?" Mireille thought about Jinho taking plasma fire for Hannah. She thought about the human soldiers at Ganymede Station who charged pirates to protect Valkyrie youngsters. She thought about Sora comforting Doyan over a broken vase, saying that things can be replaced, but people cannot. "Because it's who they are," she told her father. "They've decided that the innocent deserve protection regardless of species. They can't see suffering and do nothing. It's not strategy or politics. It's just how they're built." When they arrived at Keller, the situation was desperate. The main city was surrounded by Drask forces. Civilian evacuation was underway, but transport ships were being targeted. Human fighters were providing cover, engaging Drask vessels at impossible odds. Mireille joined the evacuation coordination team. Using her knowledge of Valkyrie culture and language to help organize the chaos, she worked for 36 hours straight, helping to load transports, coordinate shelter assignments, and comfort terrified civilians. Many recognized her as the princess who had married a human. They looked at her with questions in their eyes, wondering if she had betrayed her people. Then they saw her working alongside human soldiers, saw the way she fought to protect every Valkyrie life, and the questions faded. She wasn't a traitor. She was a bridge, showing her people what the alliance truly meant. Jinho was on the front lines. Mireille couldn't contact him, could only watch the tactical reports and pray. The human and Valkyrie forces had merged into a unified defensive line. They were outnumbered 3-1, but they held, barely. On the 4th day, the Drask commander made a tactical error. He focused his forces on what he thought was a weak point in the defensive line, a section held primarily by human troops. He expected them to break under pressure. Instead, the humans did what humans do. They called for every available soldier, human and Valkyrie alike, to reinforce that position. Then they charged. Mireille watched from the evacuation center as the battle reports came in. The humans weren't trying to win ground. They were buying time for the last transports to escape with civilians. They threw themselves at the Drask forces with the same terrifying conviction she had seen at Ganymede Station. The same willingness to pay any price to protect others. But this time, they weren't alone. Valkyrie soldiers, inspired by the humans' example, fought beside them. Two species that had been enemies a year ago now stood together, protecting each other's backs, dying for each other's children. The Drask broke first. Faced with an enemy that refused to retreat, that fought with combined fury and coordination, that seemed to view death as acceptable if it meant protecting civilians. The Drask commander made the only logical decision. He withdrew. The victory came at a terrible cost. Thousands of human and Valkyrie soldiers had died. Jinho's unit had been at the center of the fighting. When the casualty lists came through, Mireille's hands shook so badly she could barely read them. His name wasn't on the killed in action list. It was on the critically wounded list. She found him in a field hospital, converted warehouse filled with the injured from both species. Human doctors worked on Valkyrie patients. Valkyrie medics treated human soldiers. Everyone helped everyone, no distinction between former enemies. Jinho was unconscious, his body wrapped in medical bandages. The doctor, a Valkyrie physician named Sunmi, gave Mireille a tired smile. "He'll live. Stubborn human wouldn't let us move him to the evac ships until all the civilians were safe. Kept working even after taking shrapnel. We had to basically drag him here." "It sounds like him," Mireille said, tears streaming down her face as she took his hand. She stayed with him for 2 days, watching as human and Valkyrie medical staff worked together to save lives. She saw Valkyrie civilians bringing food and water to human soldiers. She saw human engineers helping rebuild damaged Valkyrie homes. She saw children, both species, playing together in the refugee centers. This was what the alliance meant. Not just a piece of paper or a political marriage, but real unity forged in shared sacrifice. When Jinho finally woke, the first thing he said was, "Are the civilians safe?" "Yes," Mireille told him, laughing and crying at the same time. "You ridiculous, brave, impossible man." "Yes, they're all safe." "Good." He smiled weakly and squeezed her hand. Then it was worth it. Emperor Taiyang arrived on Keller 3 days later. It was the first time a Valkyrie emperor had visited human military forces in peacetime. Mireille stood beside Jinho, who was still recovering but insisted on being present. As her father addressed the gathered troops, "I came here believing I understood the alliance between our peoples," Taiyang said, his voice carrying across the crowd. "I was wrong. An alliance is an agreement, a contract, a thing of politics. What I witnessed here was something far greater. I watched humans die protecting Valkyrie civilians, people they had never met, children of a species they fought a war against. I watched my own soldiers learn from that example, learn that true strength lies not in conquest, but in protection. You have taught the Valkyrie Empire a lesson we desperately needed, that there is honor and mercy, that there is power and kindness, that some things matter more than victory." He turned to face Mireille and Jinho directly. "My daughter married a human to end a war. She discovered why no empire dares challenge humanity. It's not your weapons or your numbers. It's your conviction. You have decided the universe should be better, and you're willing to die to make it so. That kind of belief cannot be defeated because victory and defeat don't matter to you. Only doing what's right matters. And in showing us that, you've made us better than we were." The Drask Collective sued for peace a week later. The battle at Keller had shaken their leadership. They had expected an easy conquest and instead found themselves facing a unified human Valkyrie force that fought with a ferocity born not of hate, but of protection. The cost of continuing the war would be too high, and the potential gains too uncertain. The peace treaty was signed aboard a human vessel, with representatives from both empires and the collective present. Mireille stood beside Jinho, her hand in his. As the documents were formalized, afterward, a Drask diplomat approached her privately. "Tell me, Princess, why did the humans fight so hard for your people? What do they gain from such sacrifice?" Mireille thought about everything she had learned over the past year. About Sora hugging a crying child over a broken vase. About Jinho throwing himself in front of plasma fire. About human soldiers charging impossible odds to protect strangers. About a species that had decided some things were worth dying for. "They don't gain anything," she said. "That's what you don't understand. They don't fight for gain. They fight because someone has to, and they've decided it might as well be them. They fight because the alternative is watching innocents suffer. And they cannot, will not, accept that as long as they can do something about it. That's what makes them strong. That's what makes them dangerous. And that's what makes them worth emulating." The diplomat walked away looking troubled. Mireille hoped he would carry that message back to his leaders. The universe needed to understand that humanity had changed the rules of the game. Power was no longer measured in weapons or territory. It was measured in conviction, in willingness to sacrifice for others. Jinho and Mireille returned to Earth a month later. The family reunion was joyous and tearful. Doyon had made welcome home signs and hung them all over the house. Sora cooked enough food to feed an army. Yunji hugged them both so hard, Jinho joked that she was going to break his ribs. That night, lying in bed beside Jinho, Mireille thought about the journey she had taken. She had come to Earth as a spy, a reluctant bride, a princess doing her duty. She had discovered something that changed everything, what real strength looked like, what real courage meant, what it truly cost to make the universe a better place. "Are you awake?" Jinho whispered in the darkness. "Yes. What are you thinking about?" "How I was supposed to learn your weaknesses. Instead, I learned your strengths. How I was supposed to stay detached and gather intelligence. Instead, I fell in love with an entire species and one very specific member of that species. She felt him smile in the darkness. That last part works out well for me, Jinho. Yes. Thank you for showing me what it means to be human. Thank you for teaching me that kindness isn't weakness, that mercy isn't surrender, that protecting others is the highest form of strength. Thank you for making me part of your family. You were always part of the family from the moment you walked into our lives. We just had to wait for you to realize it. They fell asleep holding each other. A human and a Valkyrie, a symbol of peace between former enemies. Proof that the universe could be better if people chose to make it so. In the years that followed, the human-Valkyrie alliance grew stronger. Other species joined, drawn by the example of cooperation and mutual protection. Wars still happened, conflicts still arose, but there was a new standard by which civilizations were measured. Not by their ability to conquer, but by their willingness to protect. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that humanity had understood all along. Things can be replaced, but people cannot. Life matters. Every life, regardless of species or origin or history, that belief, more than any weapon or strategy, changed the galaxy. Mireille and Jinho grew old together, raising children who were taught to value both their human and Valkyrie heritage. They told their grandchildren stories about the war that had brought their family together, about the lessons learned and the bridges built. They taught them that being strong meant protecting others, that being brave meant choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier, that being human, truly human, meant caring about others as much as yourself. And sometimes, when Mireille looked at her family, her human family that she had married into and grown to love, she thought about that question she had asked so long ago. Why did humans fight so hard? Why did they risk everything? She finally understood the answer. Because someone had to. Because the innocent deserved protection. Because making the universe better was worth any cost, even life itself. That was humanity's true strength. And it was a strength that no empire, however powerful, could ever challenge or defeat.